Hi, this is Mario, and I'll be taking on the topic modules in JavaScript. So, what exactly is a module? So, a module is a group of function that is of a similar functionality, so that it does the same sort of work. So, these are grouped together within a file and contain a code to execute a specific task under a same name. So, these small tasks together could perform a much larger program. So why we use this is that because this makes it more simpler, and then we'll be able to manage this and use it properly. And one specific feature about this is that these are not interdependent, so these will have a unique feature of their own. So we could interlink each other and then combine all of that so that we could get a result for a much bigger program. So now let's check what the features of modules are. So these are firstly independent or self-contained. So as I've told before, these are detached from each other, and these have a specific feature of their own. So next is the specific that a module will be able to perform a single or related group of tasks. So that these are used to create to have separate functionalities, which is they'll have just one task. Thirdly, these are reusable. That is, a module can be easily integrated into various kinds of programs to perform its tasks. So now let's look into what modules in JavaScript really are. So you know as we've said, like what modules are, these are files which contain related codes. So these help in developing or breaking down the bigger programs to smaller ones. So the two keywords that we use mainly in this is export and import. So the export keyword is used to specifically assign or to send away the function to the public code so that we could use it later on with the help of the input with the import keyword. Now let's look into a small example. So in this program we've got like three functions, which is get power, um, capitalize, and round to decimal place. So we have given or we have defined what these functions are, and then finally at the end of the file we can see there are two lines of code. So it says export, and then it has two functions, which is names of the functions, which is capitalize and round to decimal places. So this tells us that these two functions will be put into the public codes, which could be used later on for various other programs or modules. So now let's check into what export keyword is. So these are used so that we could specifically send away the codes to the public code. Yeah, and these values are imported binding, so that the subject to change in the module that exports it when a module updates the value of a binding, so that it will be able to send away the same change or bring in the same amount of updation that we have caused in the original code. So to learn this further, we'll be creating a file named person.javascript, so .js, and then we'll fill in the things that we want to export. So now let's check into what the two different types of exports are. So these are namely named and default. So we'll be looking into the named export first. So as the name suggests, we know that the named export will be having the class or function name as the identifier, and then we'll be using the keyword export. Now we'll be using the keyword export along with its name. So one thing that we have to be careful about is that we should be you know we should be careful enough to put names these function names in curly brackets, and then ends with semicolon. So these can be done in two ways. One is the inline, which is individually done by you know adding the keyword export prefix to um, each and every code, and then the other way is like we could club all the ones that you want, you will like. So we could see like there are two classes, which is name and age. So we'll just put name and then comma age. Next we have the default type. So in default type we won't be using the names, but then instead we'll be straight away using the tag default. So one thing we have to be careful about is that we don't have to use the curly brackets for this type of calling. Um, so usually default export happens at the bottom of line, so that you don't have to worry about checking out the component which has already been done. But then there's also a possibility that you could actually include them after it is declared. Next, we'll check on to what the import keyword is. So the import is the one which helps us to achieve or to get back the codes which we have sent through the export keyword. So this is done by giving out by writing down the import statement, and then a comma, and then we list down the features, and then followed by the keyword uh, from which we'll be setting up the root or the path from which it is being stored. So so we could do this for named exports as well as default exports. So for named exports will be like just as we did for export, we'd be including names in curly brackets, while for the default export we'd be just giving out the default message, but then we won't be specifying them in curly brackets. So next we'll be looking into renaming. So what renaming is, and then how is it advantageous, or what feature does it have? So there's a possibility that the functions or the classes could get the same name, and then so once we import from the public code, this might cause some hindrance, and then could change the way of coding. So for this, we will be using a new criteria called renaming. So in this, we'll be like giving out the old name and then changing it to a new desirable name. So let's see a simple example. For export, we'll be like giving out keyword export, and then in the curly bracket, we'll be giving out the name, and then we will be changing into a new name, close the curly bracket. So there's another way of renaming, which is like you'll be exporting as a list, and then you could also rename in it. So it will be the same thing, but then you'll have to separate it with a comma. And then for import, it would be the same as we did for the earlier methods of importing, but then we'll be giving out the new name instead of the previously defined names. So now let's check what the drawbacks of modules are. So you know that these modules are being used or like saved into a different library, like third-party library, and then we can't actually go ahead and then change the original codes which have been already set up. So it would be very tedious, and then to trace back and then changing would take lots of time and effort. So there are two ways of solving this thing, and it could be one is to modify the original code which we have just discussed before, like right now, and then one is the other one is patching. So for patch work, it would be a bit complicated because it would interfere with the public functions that uh, you know um, interfering with the public functions which have been related to the private functions. So these could actually obliterate the method or the kind of code which you have been doing, and could drastically change the results. So even though these are very advantageous, we have to be careful that we don't complicate them, and then we are very careful about using these modules. Finally, let's now take a quick recap of what we have learned. So, you know that modules are independent, self-contained chunks of code which help you to create something more complicated or a larger program, right? And then these are independent, specialized, and reusable. These are the functions of what modules actually are. So then, in JavaScript, we'll be using two different keywords, which is import and then export. So we have also seen what the two different types of exports are, which is the default and the named. And then we also know that the default keyword is used to specify a function, object, variable, or class that you want to be the first choice importance. Okay, and then we also saw how we rename, and then why exactly we do this, because we just have to overcome this problem of having the same names of functional classes. And then finally we just had a quick glance of what the drawbacks of modules are, and then we should be very clear about the usage and then how to proceed further. And this is all. Thank you.